This is Jerome Corsi. Thank you for joining us on thetruthcentral.com. You can find me on X at CorsiJerome1. You can find me on Substack at JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. Now we have a great guest with us again today, Joel Gilbert, and this is a continuation. We just did a full show on Joel's, I think, really important movie and video here on the Kamala Harris hypocrisy. This was all on the arrestedbykamala.com, arrestedbykamala.com. And it's a story of a black mother who had a child who was sick and hospitalized with sickle cell anemia and actually suffered a stroke in the hospital. And Kamala Harris prosecuted the mother for the child being a truant from school because the state, when she was attorney general out in California, was losing money from these kids, largely black kids, that wouldn't attend school. And so the hypocrisy of Kamala Harris going after a black woman, especially in this circumstance, it was a very powerful documentary, Joel. I commend you in having done the story.
Thank you.
It's making an impact on the election. I think being why Donald Trump has twice tweeted about actually posted on his Truth social website.
Correct.
And that's quite a recognition. And I commend you on that work. It goes along with much of the work you've done, going back to Barack Obama and your dreams from his real father about Frank Marshall Davis and his communist past. Joel and I have been friends for a long time. We first got together about 2007 over Barack Obama.
That's right.
We've been to Hawaii together. I've been to many of your premieres and movie theaters, Joel.
That's right.
You've done photographs for me at the Harvard Club in New York City that I use in my books. You had some photo credits in my books.
That's right.
Photos you've taken of me. So we've had a great friendship over the years and solid working relationship. I'm a strong admirer of Joel's work, and I think today you're going to see why. Joel, you're in Australia, and what are you doing in Australia?
Well, I come to Australia to premiere my brand new film that blows the lid off of climate science and exposes it all as a big hoax. Climate science and climate politics has taken over our media, education, and budgets of all Western governments. And I made a new film based on a lot of research called The Climate According to AI Al Gore. And what I did is, the way this came about has an Australian connection, and that's why I ended up getting invited here by a member of the Australian Libertarian Party named John Ruddock. He became friendly with me on Twitter earlier this year, and he showed me a speech that he gave in the Australian Parliament where he criticized the climate policies of the Australian government and also criticized Al Gore. So I sent him a direct message and said, "Oh, that was a good speech. By the way, I used to work for Al Gore. I'm from Tennessee. So when Al Gore was a U.S. Senator from Tennessee, a conservative one, by the way, and I was a student in Washington, I was an intern for him for one semester and kind of got to know him a little bit. And Mr. Ruddock told me how Al Gore got his climate science from a Harvard professor that he claimed exposed this idea that carbon in the atmosphere is going to create an apocalypse and destroy the world. And that got me interested in looking into it because I looked up this Harvard professor named Roger Revelle. It turned out that he had his papers were stored at the University of San Diego, California, not far from me. And I decided to go down and look at Roger Revelle's papers and all of his work investigating the climate. And what it revealed to me is that Al Gore's claim that he got his climate science from this Harvard professor was a lie. Roger Revelle is somebody that taught Gore a course at Harvard for one semester where Gore got a C+. I found out the course that Gore took with Roger Revelle was about world population, because in the late 60s, a lot of people were worried about the population explosion. Their concern was, is there enough food? Can the world produce enough food to accommodate the expanding population growth? It had nothing to do with atmospheric climate Climate science, nothing at all. Gore gets a C plus in the class. And I look at Roger Revelle's work, and what he did is in the 50s, he was asking questions saying, well, since the Industrial Revolution, there's been a lot more carbon that's been produced by humanity into the atmosphere. So he started taking measurements, and he found that the increase in carbon was minuscule. It was only 1/3 of 1% of gas in the atmosphere, and it increased by less than 0.1%. So Roger Revelle simply asked good questions. He said, well, where did all the carbon go? And he concluded that it was absorbed by the oceans and by plants, because carbon dioxide is plant food. The more carbon there is in the atmosphere, the more the plants absorb it. You get greener deserts, you get larger trees, larger plants, more crops. So he was very neutral. He never really made any such conclusion. And I found out that what Al Gore did is he came along and politicized Roger Revelle's work and said, there's too much carbon. The more we put in the atmosphere, the world is going to end in 10 years. And there's going to be a worldwide apocalypse if you don't agree to central planning and don't do what I say. So that was the first big revelation of this film, is finding that Al Gore, who spent, this is by the way, this is his manifesto called Earth in the Balance. Gore wrote this in 1992, where he talked about a worldwide apocalypse because of too much carbon. And none of it came from his Harvard professor, Roger Revelle. Roger Revelle even wrote an article where he said, don't listen to Al Gore. So Gore actually got caught when he ran for vice president in 1992. They actually asked him during the vice presidential debate, they said, look, your mentor doesn't even agree with you. And Gore lied. He said, oh, no, he was misquoted. Well, he was not misquoted. I went to all the archives of Roger Revelle, and he absolutely was very neutral about what carbon does in the atmosphere. He had no such apocalyptic visions as Gore was claiming. Gore also came out, remember, in 2006 with An Inconvenient Truth movie. And same thing, he spends 3 minutes of the movie talking about how he got all his climate science from Roger Revelle, but that never happened. And again, after this movie came out, that's when climate science really penetrated all of our education, media, and politics. So I started asking, well, where in the world did Gore get this, apocalypse from in his book, where he's talking about man and God and earth and Christ and how we have to stop producing carbon? And I looked at Gore's history, and I looked at his attendance at divinity school. Gore attended divinity school to get out of the Vietnam War after only 4 months. And Vanderbilt Divinity School was characterized by radical environmental professors. And they had this theory that the earth is pristine, the earth is perfect, and man came along and is ruining it, cutting down forests and burning fossil fuels. And man has to stop using technology and restore the earth to its original condition. This was their idea. And as part of the course curriculum, I found out Gore read this book called Our Plundered Planet from 1940s. Very popular book in the 40s, pretty much saying the same thing, that mankind is destroying the world and we have to get rid of engines and get rid of pollution, and otherwise we're all going to die. So when I read this book, I found out that Gore simply plagiarized Our Plundered Planet word for word to write Earth in the Balance. But his problem was he wanted to be president one day in 1992. He created the environmental issue for politics. Here's the story we learned in the film, is that Gore's father, a lot of people don't know, was a U.S. Senator from Tennessee. And his parents raised him to become president one day, raised him to be a politician. The problem Gore had, which he knew about, was he didn't have a personality for politics. He had no personality. He had no charisma. So he realized he needed issues. If he got issues, that could get him political support. So in the early 80s, he made himself into be an arms control expert. He hired Leon Firth off the House Arms Control Committee, who I actually worked with when I worked for Gore. And he trained him in the nuances of arms control. So Gore became kind of this defense hawk. But then Reagan won the Cold War, and Gore became irrelevant as a defense hawk. So that's in the early 90s. Gore decided, well, environmentalism is important to Americans. We just had the Chernobyl disaster, the Exxon Valdez crisis, the spill. Medical waste was washing up on the East Coast. So he felt that environmentalism was a issue that crossed all class lines. It could help him become president. So his problem is when he plagiarized this wacky book from the 1940s for his environmental manifesto, he couldn't say, I just plagiarized this book that I got off of my environmental wacko professors at Vanderbilt. So he lied. He lied and said my very esteemed Harvard professor, who I got a C plus and didn't say I had a C plus. I took a course from him. He doesn't say what course it is. And that's how I got all this climate science. So that's where I blow the foundation of climate science, that there's too much carbon in the atmosphere. And where Gore got it from, I blow it out of the water, and you find out that the entire climate politics, climate money, you name it, it's all based on a complete fraud of Al Gore. And it's a very fun movie because it's called Climate AI Al Gore. Because what happened is, after I went to the archives at the University of San Diego, I wrote Al Gore an email, and I thought he'd respond because he knows me. I work for him. I even ran into him about 10 years ago at the Nashville airport. We were both flying Southwest Airlines to LA. And I sat next to him on the plane, had a nice talk with him. So I thought he'd respond, but he didn't. So I said to myself, well, wait a minute. I could recreate Al Gore in video and his exact voice and interview him about his life history and about his climate science, but have an honest conversation because he'll say what I want him to say. So I read 6 biographies about Al Gore, hundreds of articles, and I put together this entire dialogue where the AI Al Gore gives you an honest representation of climate science. So that's why it's a lot of fun, and you learn a lot, and it's a lot of research, and I think it's a monumental film. So they brought me here to Australia to screen the film here at CPAC, where I'm speaking in Brisbane. I'll be at the Parliament House in Canberra at their national parliament, the New South Wales Parliament, and also screening the film in Melbourne and Sydney. And so if you have any friends in Australia, tell them to come out. Go to climatealgore.com. And if you go to the screenings page, you can see on the screenings page all the upcoming venues where I'm going to be doing a Q&A, as well as appearing to introduce the film.
I think that's great, Joel. And now I think we've got a trailer. I want to play the trailer. Chris, can you get the trailer up so we can play the trailer here? It's a very, very entertaining film, and it's an important film. Let's watch the trailer.
We have a global emergency, an existential threat to human civilization on this planet as we know it.
Al Gore is the godfather of the worldwide climate change movement.
He even won the Nobel Prize.
When I was a student, I worked for Al Gore. But wait a minute, Al Gore is no scientist.
Well, this man's name was Roger Revelle, and that's the whole reason why I got interested in this.
Did Revelle even agree with the climate theories that Al Gore sold to the world?
I decided to dig deep and do the research. Dear Senator Gore, I would love to interview you about Revelle and learn more about your journey in climate science, as well as your personal history. Gore didn't respond, so I decided to use AI technology to speak to Al Gore.
Well, hello again, Joel.
Senator Gore,
I'm thrilled to have a visit with one of my old student interns.
are you ready for some questions?
Fire away.
What was it like to be a politician's son?
My dad cast a giant shadow over my life. I revered him and I feared him.
Why did you only get a C+ in Revelle's class at Harvard?
I invoke Roger Revelle's name.
Later on, I may have exaggerated my relationship with Roger Revelle.
How much did your pot smoking influence your climate alarmism?
I did smoke a lot of marijuana.
When I compare our plundered planet to Earth in the Balance, it looks to me like you just rewrote this book.
Human beings must heal the relationship
The key to human life is the relationship
between our civilization
between people
and the ecological system
and the resources
of the earth.
of the earth.
Whew. Well, okay, you got me. I never expected anyone to put that all together.
Let's start with what really is CO2.
This is a lot tougher discussion than I'd imagined. Carbon dioxide is not a poison or a bad gas. Carbon dioxide is our friend. All my predictions of rising sea levels flooding coastal cities were a bust.
What do politicians really want?
Central planning and wealth redistribution.
Put climate change at the center of our domestic, national security, and foreign policy.
It's really all an assault on freedom and prosperity.
You have stolen my dreams, my childhood.
The sky is not falling. It's all a hoax that has turned into one big scam.
It's great. This is a subject that's very close to my heart because my book on the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change has done quite well. And of course, I really go through the science. And Chris, at some point, you can show the cover of the book as well, because I think it affirms what you're saying, Joel. And I went back to also the 50s and all the thinkers at the time who were Malthusians that were really on to this global warming idea. There's the cover of my book. And I think what you've done with Al Gore is just tremendous in terms of, debunking his role as this great climate guru. Now, I want to ask you a bunch of questions about this, Joel, in terms of, because I think, you've done great work on Revelle, and you've covered that. But it's the climate movement has almost taken on the characteristics of religion. Would you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it really has become this religious thing. Al Gore is kind of the godfather or the messiah of the climate change movement, but they certainly don't have, like many mass movements, they don't really have a god. It's secular, but they do have a devil. And a lot of religions have a devil, and the devil for climate change enthusiasts are people that simply don't agree with them. They're heretics. They believe that if you don't believe in their climate science, there's something terribly wrong with you, and you're evil, and you should be punished. They do offer a way to salvation. In climate belief system, the way to salvation is sustainability. So if you buy an electric car, you're good. You've done something good. Or if you don't fly private plane, now you're no longer an original sinner. You're getting salvation. The people that don't believe in climate science are heretics that need to be punished. So you even have RFK Jr., for example, who's very popular now amongst conservatives because of his endorsement of Trump. I've got him on tape. He's in my movie screaming about people that don't believe in climate science should go to jail like war criminals. So there is this kind of sick mentality that climate science preaches, that the world is going to end, and if you don't agree with them, there's something wrong with you, but you can gain salvation through sustainability.
Right, and it's very difficult to argue with these people because they're not really interested in facts. They're not interested in the science. This becomes as you say, kind of an ideological belief that you can't challenge. Regretted. You've taken away my future. You've deprived me. You're going to destroy the earth. Because you're having too many hydrocarbon fuels being burned.
Right. Gore really started it by his vicious attacks on people that didn't agree with his climate science, even back in the 90s. He would say openly, and even in his film, in his book, he says people that don't agree are like the tobacco companies back in the 50s who said that it was okay to smoke cigarettes. So he kind of cast them in the evil light. He brought climate scientists like Sherwood Idso as one of them. I'll give you an example. There were many climate scientists in the 90s that were saying Al Gore is full of it, just like his Harvard professor said. One was Sherwood Idso, and he's in my film. He conducted an experiment for several years where he grew sour orange trees, and he exposed some of the sour orange trees to high levels, 3 times the normal level of carbon dioxide. And he also grew sour orange trees at regular levels of carbon dioxide. The ones that were exposed to 3 times as much carbon dioxide grew twice as tall and had 3 times the output of fruit. So he concluded that we need more carbon dioxide, not less, that it's plant food, that the earth has relatively low carbon dioxide now historically. And the climate policies of Al Gore and trying to get rid of carbon dioxide are absurd. Al Gore invited him to speak in the Senate, and Sherwood Idso explained this. And in his committee hearing, Al Gore accused Sherwood Idso of working for OPEC. And I had an interesting personal experience with Al Gore that I didn't really understand until I made this film about how he attacks people that don't agree with him. When I was working for him as an intern, when he was U.S. Senator, he invited the interns into his office one day, and he was just being friendly and asking what we studied. And then he said, "I'm opening the floor for questions." And one girl asked him about what should U.S. policy be to stop terrorism in the Middle East. There had been some terrorism in Israel. So Gore went on for about 5 minutes talking about you got to negotiate everything and have a negotiating table and make a negotiated settlement and diplomacy. And when he was done, I said, "No, Senator Gore, I think what she's asking is, shouldn't the United States have a policy to deter terrorism so there wouldn't be terrorism? What should that policy be?" And he turned around to me and he yelled at me. He said, "What would you do? Just bomb everybody?" Like in my face, like yelling at me. I was shocked. And so I said back to him, I said, "Well, Senator Gore, I don't have a policy, but when I'm a U.S. Senator one day, I will have a policy." So everyone was shocked that I said that because you're not really supposed to talk back to him. I only understood it when I made this film, that he viciously attacks people that question him or don't agree with what he's saying. And that's the theme of the climate movement. If you don't agree, Al Gore established that you must be nuts. You're like a tobacco company. You're just crazy. What are you going to do? Bomb everybody? It's this anger. And I think the climate movement adopted that from Al Gore.
Yet Al Gore has made a lot of money. I mean, how wealthy is he these days?
Well, he became what we call the first carbon billionaire by cutting all these climate deals with big corporations. He's made hundreds of millions of dollars. And, he certainly doesn't have to worry about too much financially. But that's when he came out with that film, An Inconvenient Truth, after he'd made almost $1 billion. And people don't remember, but when he came out with that film, it was kind of a way to get back into politics, because at the time, Democrats were looking for an alternative to Hillary Clinton for 2008. And he was being widely talked about as reestablishing himself with this film. He later got taken over by Barack Obama's candidacy. But he's someone that made a ton of money promoting a false narrative that there's too much carbon in the atmosphere. Carbon is only, again, 1/3 of 1%. The Earth is 95% atmosphere is water vapor. Temperatures are not affected by 1/3 of 1% of carbon. Temperatures are affected by the tilt of the Earth, sunspots, volcanoes, ocean flows. We don't even know what else affects it. But carbon has no effect. You could triple the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. It would all be absorbed by plants and the ocean, and it would have no effect.
Yet, I mean, the whole idea of not using hydrocarbon fuels is depopulationist. I mean, you couldn't support the number of people we have on Earth without using robust and inexpensive fuel. So you go to wind and solar. I mean, what kind of impact does Al Gore's ideas have on the U.S. economy?
Well, he's probably been the most destructive force over time with his climate fraud, with his fraudulent representations of his climate science coming from Roger Revelle. No one ever looked into it. Gore got a C+ in a class that Gore took for 3 months that was in world population. I got a hold of the final exam, the lecture notes, and the reading lists. Not one thing about atmospheric climate, nothing. It was all about population growth, and Gore hardly went to class. So it was all based on a fraud. It was based on a plagiarism of this wacky book from the 1940s and from studying with these wacky environmental professors at Vanderbilt. So Gore was never very smart. He always tried to, trick people into thinking he's something he's not. He was an arms control expert. He was a defense hawk. Not true. When he first came on the scene in politics in 1976, he ran for a House seat that his father had held in Middle Tennessee. Now, Gore was a big anti-war liberal in the 60s. He actually convinced his father, Senator Al Gore Sr. from Tennessee, to become anti-Vietnam War, and contributed to his father losing his seat in Tennessee because Tennesseans, which I know, I'm from Tennessee, were very conservative and pro-military, anti-communist. So Al Gore Sr. loses his Senate seat in 1970. Al Gore Jr. knows it was his fault because his father got too far away from his constituents. He became anti-Vietnam War when his constituents were pro-Vietnam War. So when Gore ran for House in 1976 for the U.S. congressman, he comes out as a conservative, born-again Christian, He says homosexuality is abnormal. He says, he supports, he's anti-abortion. He comes out as a very, very conservative Democrat. So he's always pretended to be something he's not. And the climate science is just another thing that Al Gore misrepresented to get political support, but it turned into this worldwide movement that is now taking over almost every government's budget.
It's if you watch the Inconvenient Truth and all the sea levels rising and the polar bears are dying, the poor polar bears, all these cute little polar bears are going to be isolated in ice floes and they're going to die, and all the climate catastrophes. I mean, it's almost like climate porn. I mean, it's just exaggerated stories of all the horrible things that are going to happen because we burn hydrocarbon fuels. I mean, it's very anti-human in its fundamental premise that people are the plight of the earth.
Well, if you look at the film, you realize what a fraud the entire movement is. When Gore invented it through his false claims about carbon dioxide, it was called global warming. For many years, it was global warming. The Earth actually did have a lot of warming trends between 1975 and 1998, but a 25-year warming trend within a period of hundreds of years is nothing. Suddenly, from 1998 through 2007-8, the world started getting colder again. And that's when they're having a very tough time having these climate conferences in freezing weather. And they couldn't land the planes because there was so much snow. So they decided, well, we better change this because the Earth keeps getting colder. So they changed the term to climate change so that any seasonal weather, if it's hot in the summer, if it's snowy in the winter, if there's a hurricane in the fall, they say, oh, that's climate change. And it's very hard to argue with that. Every time there's any weather event, the politicians on the left say, well, that's because of climate change. Give us more money, give us more centralized power. This film, I think, debunks the whole story, and I think it'll hopefully have an impact.
Yeah, and so kind of, if we can sum up, Joel, what are people going to learn watching this video, watching the film? And it's coming out very soon, but what are people going to learn?
Well, you learn some of the things I've talked about is you learn Al Gore's real history, how he decided to become the godfather of the climate movement, starting with his Earth at the Balance manifesto, how it was based on a complete scientific fraud, claiming that his Harvard professor taught him that carbon was increasing so much, we're all going to die in 7 years, the sky is going to fall like Chicken Little. Completely false. His Harvard professor never said such a thing. No one ever looked into it. And you're going to find out that it's all from this book called Our Plundered Planet. And once you learn that the basis of climate science that Al Gore formed is fraudulent, you see how these other things become fraudulent. Global warming becoming climate change, somehow governments controlling the weather, lack of understanding of the science behind it. They always say 97% of all scientists agree. It's completely false. They say that to prevent people from asking good questions. The only scientists who agree with global warming and climate change are those being paid by the government, who are being paid to agree. It's a huge trillion-dollar business. Universities now in on it. Any real scientist not funded by the government will tell you that there's nothing to global warming at all.
Well, Joel, the website is Climate Al Gore, ClimateAlGore.com, ClimateAlGore.com.
Right.
And Joel, the movie's going to be widely available very soon, right?
Right. So I'm in Australia on a promotional tour, all these screenings, and then the film will be released December 10th in the United States. It'll be available on every streaming platform you can think of, DVD, Amazon, Roku, YouTube movies, you name it, as well as DVDs in stores. We may have some screenings around the country, which we'll be announcing on the website. But there's a lot to learn, I think, that you can find out in this film, because the climate politics, as much as it's big in the United States, it's 10 times more a part of the political spectrum and 10 times more intense in Europe and in Australia, even than in the United States. And it just has overtaken politics, budgets, education, media for no good reason at all. based on fraudulent science. And that's what you learn when you see the film.
And you do a brilliant job with Al Gore too. I mean, the AI is really fun to watch, and you've got him down. It's, Al Gore has become kind of a caricature of himself. He's gained enormous amounts of weight. He's gotten enormously wealthy. He's not succeeded as a politician to his desire. He did not become president. He became vice president, and of course, he, lost in the 2000 election, which was, again, to his demise. In the runoff with George W. Bush, if everyone remembers that. And
you might remember he lost in 1988. He ran for president at 38, 39 years old. He also lost to Mike Dukakis very badly, running as a very conservative U.S. senator. And it was after that he gave up conservative politics. He realized that he had to go far left to get the Democrat nomination. And that's why he wrote that book, Earth in the Balance.
That's right. I mean, that's when Dukakis ruined his campaign by showing up in that silly tank commander helmet, if you'll recall that picture. He destroyed his career with one photograph. And but there's Gore, and at the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab. He's really gotten into the inner circle of the extreme left wackos who are proclaiming this fraudulent climate change, global warming nonsense, which is pure nonsense science, fiction. And Joel, you've done a great job of exposing it and going to the roots of it. I mean, I think you got even farther into the roots of it than I did, going deeper to the levels beyond which I had seen in the 1940s. And, I commend your research, which is outstanding in this film. You really do a thorough job in all your films of getting to the facts, of traveling. You get to really see the scenes, get to see you in the libraries looking at the papers. I mean, every one of your videos is a quest to find out the truth. Yeah.
I think we got to it in The Climate According to AI Al Gore. Everyone who's seen it so far, even the people knowledgeable about the climate science fraud, say, I learned things I had no idea. I went back to the basics. Gore repeatedly claimed for years in his film, in his book, speeches, I got this information from Roger Revelle, who said no such thing. So that's where it all started.
It's a great revelation of a movement that's gone worldwide that's founded on a lie, and is nothing but a lie all the way through the science. And the movies, your DVD is very entertaining. I think it's going to capture people. They're going to watch it all the way through, and there it is right there. And I think I found it to be extremely entertaining and maybe one of your best, Joel. I think you're actually getting better with your videos.
That's what they always say. So definitely everybody check it out, climatealgore.com. You can actually order the DVD now on Amazon. There's a link that goes to Amazon on climatealgore.com. It'll be delivered later. But I'll be updating you on my tour here in Australia, and you should be seeing lots of news coverage of it as well.
Thank you, Joel. And also be sure to catch out Joel's other video, this Arrested by Kamala, arrestedbykamala.com, which is this black mother's story of how Kamala Harris, as Attorney General, prosecuted her because her daughter was a truant from school. Her daughter, however, was very ill in the hospital with sickle cell anemia and actually had a stroke in the hospital, going through 2 years of prosecution by Kamala Harris with her. I mean, it's a captivating video and one that is making an impact on the 2024 election. And Joel, both of these are just outstanding videos, and it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show. So thank you for joining us.
Okay, I appreciate all your support. Thank you, Jerry.
This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. In the end, God always wins. God's going to win here too. This climate lie is going to be history soon, as people wake up to the reality that solar and wind and electric cars, these are weaker technologies that do not really work on the scale needed for human beings to flourish on Earth. God, in the end, God always wins. All these lies get exposed. The truth prevails. But in the meantime, we need to get the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14. We need to get down on our knees and repent for having taken God out of the schools, going back to the 1940s, out of our lives, out of our marriages. We're killing so many babies, chopping them apart in the womb after Roe v. Wade. We need to get back to God. If you like the show, follow our sponsors. We're going to be doing some new programs with Swiss America, which I think are going to be very exciting. Thank you for joining us. And it's been a real pleasure to do two shows with my good friend Joel Gilbert. Thank you for joining us. This is thetruthcentral.com. We're doing podcasts every weekday. God bless.